Hey everybody, I'm Chris Metzler, one of the programmers here at the Decibels Music Film Festival. Glad to bring you all here in a virtual world, or if you happen to see the film live at the Roxy, here's an additional Q&A for you. We're lucky enough to have the two directors of the film here tonight, Christopher Boone and Kevin Smokler. Thanks again for being here, Christopher and Kevin.
Thanks for having us, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
As everybody knows now that they've seen the film and things, is that we actually have some local connections with the film. So it's always neat when a little bit of serendipity intervenes in that way.
Indeed.
So maybe a good place to start, I think many people always wonder is like, they have an idea for a documentary, but, not everybody goes and, picks up the camera and decides to make it. How did you guys kind of connect, and how did you decide that you were going to kind of go down this rabbit hole?
This is Kevin. Chris and I are old college classmates. We had a bit of an overlap at our university, but I'm 2 years older than him, so not much of one. We were just kind of into the same things. There was a very small group of people who were into films and filmmaking at a place like Johns Hopkins. So Chris and I knew each other through that. We reconnected in 2016 when I was on book tour, and he invited me to come out to Albuquerque, where he's based. I'm based right here in San Francisco, and do a couple of events. And we really hit it off. And he informed me he had been making movies for a good few years. He showed them to me. I thought they were terrific. And I am a nonfiction storyteller. And so I thought maybe we could make something together, but I had precisely one idea for a nonfiction film, AKA a documentary. And it was this: how do we explain the, at that point, decade-long comeback of vinyl records in America, and how do we tell that story? And so I said to Chris, maybe we could make a movie together about this very subject. What do you think? And he said, I don't know. You live in California, I live in New Mexico. Let's get on the phone once a week and talk it out and see if this goes anywhere. And maybe it wouldn't have, but it did. And so after 6 months, we basically had to say, is this a real thing, or do we just enjoy talking on Friday mornings, and should we leave it at that? And thankfully for us, it became a real thing, because it was a tremendous adventure, and we made a ton of friends doing it.
Very cool. Yeah, it looked just watching the film, I think you can kind of see the joy in the way that you guys approached it. Chris, with the way that you being both of you are storytellers, but in being the kind of established filmmaker of the two of you, how did you kind of decide that you were going to kind of wanted to translate this onto the screen, in the sense that this was going to kind of be a more cinematic journey than just, a story that you might read in a book?
That's actually one of the things that Kevin and I debated while we were kicking around the idea, over the phone for all those months. And actually, we had to ask ourselves, is this a long form article? Is it a podcast? And ultimately what we came down on, there were a couple of things that made us say it's a documentary. First, we wanted to show kind of the diversity of who's into vinyl records. And it doesn't really come across as in a podcast. Yeah, maybe in print, but not quite as much. But then also, records are an incredibly visual art form as well. The album covers, the records themselves, it's really tactile. We wanted to see people interacting with their collections. And then when we decided to actually shoot it, and we worked with our cinematographer, Sherry Kalk, we knew we were going to be shooting a lot of talking heads. And so one of the ideas we had early on was, since we're going to have two cameras, we'd like to shoot everyone in a wide and then in like a medium or close. And in their wide, as much as possible, we wanted that shot to actually tell a story about the person that we are talking to, typically including their record collection, but just kind of the way we frame them, we also want to tell a story. And so all those things. And then honestly, seeing how records get made. I mean, sure, I can tell you how they get made, but it's a lot easier to show you how they get made. So there are just a lot of visual elements that it ultimately made sense. So even though Kevin came to me originally with the idea as a documentary, we did have to debate it and figure out if this was the right way to go, because it's a lot of time, it's a lot of energy, and it's certainly a decent amount of money to actually commit something to quote unquote film.
And as you kind of so given your kind of background, Kevin, and also Chris, is like, how much of this was kind of structured ahead of time versus was kind of discovery and kind of like made in the editing room, you know? Like at some point in time, like, did you knew everybody that you wanted to talk to, you know, early on, or were there just kind of like surprises around different corners?
We were a degree of separation from everybody who ended up in the movie, and the 2 or 3 people we did not know personally or know someone who knew them personally, we had someone who was already booked for the movie introduce us to. But the vast majority of them were someone we knew or someone we could be introduced to by someone we knew. I think we had a pretty strong outline when, you know, in pre-production, and when we started filming, we had sort of divided up the sections of the movie like tracks on a record. I wanted the movie to literally flip over to the B-side halfway in between. Chris vetoed that idea, but we were sort of told after we had completed principal photography and we were logging footage for the benefit of our post-production team. They kind of told us, in this process of editing, the actual story you are telling with this film will come out. And Chris, who had made movies before, nodded and said, "Makes sense to me." And I, being naive and full of myself, was like, what nonsense is that? We just spent 6 weeks driving all over this great land filming stuff. Of course we know what our movie is about. And they were right, and I was wrong. We thought we were making a movie about the comeback of an old technology, and we hope that what people get from seeing Vinyl Nation is that we were making a movie about human connection.
No, and I think you guys do a really good job of pulling that together, in the sense that, you know, I hope with the folks that get a chance to see it here during Decibels, is that people from a lot of different backgrounds, in the sense of, like, you know, you don't have to understand or know why folks love vinyl to appreciate the film. And I think that holds true, hopefully, for a lot of the films as part of the festival. And so, like, you know, I know you guys, you know, the last year has been a little bit weird just with the pandemic and things, but like, you know, I always am finding curious of, like, what are some of the kind of reactions you've been getting, you know, from the audience, or things that, I mean, that have kind of surprised you during that? It's like, now you've made the film and now it's out there in the world. Anything, you know, interesting in the way that folks are approaching it?
Well, one of the things that's been interesting to me is that people that, you know, wanted to see the film maybe because they knew us, but they weren't into records, or somebody brought them in to watch the movie and they had no connection to vinyl records, have told us, we've heard this repeatedly, like, people are like, "Oh, I think I really want to get into records now." So to your point, like, just because maybe you hadn't been collecting records doesn't mean you won't be collecting records after our film. So we definitely know people have gone out and bought turntables after they've seen it. So that was a bit of a surprise. Somebody actually built a turntable after watching our film during the pandemic, because, you know, they had some time on their hands. So that was probably one of the more surprising reactions. But I've only been able to see the film with an audience in person one time, and that was recently. That was only a little over a month ago. And it was really nice to actually hear people's reaction in the moment. I've seen the movie enough times that I don't need to see it again, but actually to hear people's responses to the film was really gratifying. And it's not like we set out to put in a bunch of funny moments into the film, but, you know, with the help of our editors, Jason Welling and David Fabello, you know, not only did they help us move the story forward, but they did find those moments that would bring in some of that lightheartedness and that humor. And so it was great to hear people actually laugh. And there's certain characters that bring a lot of joy. Elliot, the young, I think it was 12-year-old at the time when we filmed him, certainly being one of them. So just to hear people's reaction to him live, not so much surprising, but it was a lot of fun. Kevin, how about you? What kind of reactions have you heard that you think about?
I mean, it's great that when we have played film festivals, we've been fortunate to sort of learn about and become friends with the local ecosystem in the places that we've gone to, not just the record stores. We kind of feel obligated to go to record stores when we are in different towns. Just as we got booked at a documentary festival in New Haven, and the guy who booked us, who was a filmmaker himself, had made a movie about Connecticut pizza culture, and he told us that he was forced mostly at gunpoint to serve pizza at the end of every screening. We haven't been coerced in that way yet, but we kind of feel like we need to visit record stores when we're in any town that's been nice enough to show our film festival. And that's been fun. We've also gotten to meet, concert promoters and musicians and people that are part of the local music ecosystem in towns all over America. That's been a really special thing. And I think no, I don't think either Chris or I needs to like sit down and take in Vinyl Nation again for the 75th time. But it is still cool to see what people react to, because the first year and change of the history of this movie was being booked at virtual film festivals and mostly talking about it with people afterwards, after the fact. So Chris has only sat in an actual theater with people watching the movie once, me maybe 3 times. And it's been really cool to see which moments land every single time without a doubt, and which ones depend on where we are that day and how people are feeling that day.
Well, very cool. Thanks again for sharing the film with us. And we're obviously excited that we're getting a chance to screen it both in person at the Roxy and here online as part of Decibels. And I think you've made a very special film, one that people will hopefully continue to discover over the years. And, with that said, we as programmers at film festivals and things, we kind of consider kind of the early kind of street marketing level marketing team, for independent filmmakers. And so with that said, as our audiences are out there, what's the best way that they can kind of help get the film out there in the world, or even follow the progress of the film?
Yeah, we sort of centralize everything online, news about the movie at vinylnationfilm.com. Our social media properties, Facebook and Instagram, are vinylnationdoc.com. And we update religiously there whatever developments have happened with the movie thus far. Right now, it's mostly film festivals, but as we come into the new year, particularly when we find out when the next record store day is going to be, there will be more news as to when the movie will be available in a broader way.
Awesome. So yeah, everybody go and follow Vinyl Nation Doc on Facebook and Instagram or Twitter, and spread the word and let people know you saw this great film, and to kind of bring it to their local town. So thanks again, Kevin and Chris. Really appreciate it, and all the best with the efforts in getting out there in the world.
Thanks. Appreciate you guys having us.
Thanks, Rich. Appreciate it.